Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gift of Health Weekly Wellness Chat. Let us know if the audio is good. Also, let us know where you're joining us from. Okay, those of you just joining, I'm Dr. Arjun Rayapudi, and this is my lovely wife, Dr. Shobha Rayapudi. We're both co-founders of Gift of Health and board certified lifestyle medicine doctors. We at Gift of Health help people to prevent and reverse chronic disease, get off medications using food and lifestyle as medicine. Every week, we are discussing important health topics and how to basically prevent and reverse chronic diseases, gut diseases using food and lifestyle as medicine. And for last 3 weeks, we've been focusing on gut health, and today is the third part of the gut health series.
Can you believe it's December already? I know this year is almost going to end. We are in the last month. Like all throughout this year, like we all have experienced the effects of pandemic, and so much is going on towards this health. And this year, like every week, like every Wednesday, like we have touched upon few topics. We have brought in guests, and so for those of you who are seeing us for first time, so we just want to let you know that you can go back to our previous sessions, which is available in Gift of Health YouTube channel and also in the Gift of Health page, because so many things have been discussed, and this is what we want to bring into awareness and help each and every one of you to be healthy.
Absolutely, yeah. So, most of the chronic diseases that we are seeing in the hospitals, in the clinics, and many of our family members are struggling with are preventable. Like not only preventable but also even reversible when we make simple diet and lifestyle changes.
But I think the most important question to ask is, who is responsible for our health? During this pandemic times, like it might be very easy for us to say maybe the government or the system is responsible for everything. But if we have to pose this question, who do you think is responsible for our health? So type in the chat, like whoever you think is responsible for the health.
Hi, Sean. Hello, Kim. Nice to see you here.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Like, we are responsible for our health. Like taking responsibility, personal responsibility for our health is so important. Like until that happens, whatever the care that is done by the others for our health, is it will have some effect. But once what we have seen at Gift of Health is like once people start taking responsibility for their health, like we see in the comments, like we are hearing from Sean and Kim and Earl, all of these they have like these Gift of Health like family members, and they have taken their health, like made it into a top priority and take full responsibility for their health, and like they've seen amazing results with in terms of reversing chronic disease and getting off of medications, losing weight, and it's just amazing once you start taking responsibility for your health, how the nuclear effect happens.
Yeah, and once we realize that we are responsible for our health, how long does it take to change? Not much. So
yeah, and other thing is like once you start taking responsibility, what you'll notice is like it's not that you're not going to have challenges, right? That there will be challenges along the way. There will be obstacles along the way. But once we start taking responsibility for our health, and then we start to see the obstacles as opportunities, rather like if what happens if you don't take responsibility for your health, we're putting someone else responsible for our health. So if something happens with us, then what is the natural tendency is to blame someone, right? Like when we blame, then we are not in the driver's seat anymore, like we're in the victim place, right? So what once you start taking responsibility that you are in the driver's seat for your health, and the good health is not that hard. We're not saying it's going to be easy cakewalk. No, there will be obstacles. There will be challenges. There will, like, if you have not, um, if you haven't had like good guide or mentor or like good resource, then it's very easy to fall into the traps of confusion about what to eat and what to avoid, what is healthy, what's not healthy. So there are obstacles, like in terms of knowledge. There are obstacles in terms of doing it. Like sometimes you may know what's healthy to eat, but implementing it can itself be a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. So with that being said, irritable bowels is something that we hear common. Like I would say like gut diseases, they are something that they come all of a sudden, and we want to get rid of them. And irritable bowels is one of them. So today, I know like we are in the third series of gut health series. So if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat. Like if you or your family member of, or if you know of someone who is experiencing that condition, feel free to ask questions, and we are here to answer those, because we want to make sure that like you understand what causes this and what are the steps that you can take actually to come out of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Connie. Hello, Connie. She's saying hello from Jamaica.
Yes.
Yes, Janine, you are so right. Like, our cells are responsible for our health. Absolutely. So coming to the gut health conditions, especially like today, we're going to be focusing on understanding irritable bowels, what causes inflammatory bowel disease, such as Crohn's and colitis, and also look into what can we do about celiac disease. Very important topics. So let's start with irritable bowels, one of the most common ones. Like, do you know, either you or someone like in your family, like, do you know anyone who had irritable bowels? It's so common.
Hi,
Anne says, Anne, hi.
Anne.
So irritable bowels is where like it can present in so many ways. People can have bloating or constipation or diarrhea or combination of these things. And some people may even have pain. So it can present in so many different ways. And most of the time, these people who have irritable bowels also experience some sort of stress, right? So stress is a common accompaniment. Anxiety and depression, like mild anxiety and depression, is a common accompaniment. So what causes irritable bowels?
Yeah. So
What exactly causes irritable bowels?
so does anybody want to
Yeah, take a guess.
take a guess? What do you think causes irritable bowels?
There are only two things that can irritate your bowels. Irritable bowels is like your bowels are getting irritated, right? There are only two things that actually irritate the bowels. One is the food. Now, what is one thing that is touching the bowels all the time? It's the food. So one is the food, and the second one is the nerves. Nerves, the nervous system. See, many people don't realize like how important it is the nervous system, the function of the nervous system, how it is doing when it comes to the the well-being of the gut. Food is easier to understand, right? Like food, every morsel of food that we're putting into our mouth is being digested by the stomach and intestines, and the intestines are constantly in touch with the food. And we eat uh, like pounds and pounds of food. Like every day, on average, we eat about 2 to 4 pounds of food. And then by the age 50, can you guess how much food that all that will be? About 100,000 pounds of food. And all this food has quite a bit of effect on the functioning of the bowels. So we'll look into what kind of foods irritate the gut more, and what kind of foods that soothe the gut. Also, we look into the connection between the nervous system and the irritable bowels. We can also look into what kind of things that you could do in terms of managing the nervous system to help with irritable bowels.
So,
Sound good?
yeah, meanwhile, we had a question in the comment like, after transitioning to plant-based diet, I'm experiencing bloating. So, like, what can we do about it?
Yeah, so
yeah, so I would say the quick answer is like, especially like whenever we are changing our diet. So let's say earlier, if we were used to eating certain kind of foods, and now after we transition to whole food plant-based way of eating. So one is recognizing like what is causing that bloating or excessive gassiness. Is it the beans, or is it some other things that you're eating that is causing? So couple things to keep in mind. So whenever we are changing the diet, our gut bacteria is changing. So give some transition time. So during that transition time, you will be experiencing some bloating or gassiness, uh, since your gut bacteria is changing. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And let's say like even if you're moving from eating processed food to whole foods where the fiber intake has been increased, make sure you're drinking lots of water. And sometimes you feel full as opposed to eating processed food. When you're eating processed food, your stomach doesn't get the fullness signal so easily, but when you're eating that whole food plant based, your stomach gives the signal that you're full. So that is one difference that you would notice. And some people also think that as like they're feeling heavy or a little bit bloated. So those are things to keep in mind. Okay. Yeah.
So it is not uncommon to experience these symptoms, like especially when you're transitioning to plant-based eating, it is not unusual to experience these symptoms. So think of it as a part of the process. And not everyone experiences this. We notice about 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 people actually observe some bloating or some gassiness when you start eating more plant-based foods. One thing that would help is actually chew the food really well. Like because whole foods that are plant-based, like you really need to use the teeth well. Like so, chew the food well, because the more digested food that goes into the stomach and intestines, less bloating you'll have. Like so, as Shobha said, drinking lots of water and also giving enough time for your gut to adjust. For many people, it may be the amount of greens and beans that can cause some bloating. What can help is if you experience bloating, then it will be helpful to cut back on the amount of beans and greens that you eat, but you could continue to focus on eating more vegetables, more fruits, and more whole grains, more starches, whereas you scale back a bit on beans and greens.
Yeah. And sometimes some people may notice if they are already used to eating beans, but not whole grains, even some of them may experience that bloating sensation too. So when you're switching to whole grains also, so as I said, like when the fiber content is more, you might experience that that heaviness or bloating.
Is it clear? Is it helpful?
Okay.
Good. So this is a like a common thing that we see in the Gift of Health, like students like who have gone through the Gift of Health course and have been following us on the Gift of Health page. Like people when they had irritable bowels, especially I remember like one student like Gwen. She struggled with irritable bowels most of her life, and when she started eating like more plant-based foods after finishing the Gift of Health workshop, she noticed that within few days she wasn't having irritable bowels anymore. All the stomach cramps were gone, the acid reflux was gone, and the bloating was gone. And then what she shared with us, like I used to think I had irritable bowels, but irritable bowel syndrome. But then
I realized
like now I realize that
I have
eating bad syndrome. So no, what is she referring to? See, the most common foods that on the Western diet or standard Newfoundland diet, standard American diet, the foods that are loaded with meat products and dairy products like butter, cheese, oils, and different kinds of meats. These foods irritate the gut um, in many ways, inflame the gut in many ways, especially if you take meats, the animal protein, the chicken, turkey, beef, pork, like all these kinds of different kinds of animal proteins, including the dairy products and eggs. Like the more animal protein you take, the more acid stomach has to make. And the more acid stomach makes, as we shared in the previous lectures on the gut health, the excess acid in the stomach does one of three things. Acid can burn the lining of the stomach, or the acid can come up north into esophagus, causing acid reflux, or excess acid from the stomach can go into the intestines. And that excess acid load that is coming from the stomach to the intestines, it increases the motility of the gut. It causes more gasiness in the intestines, more bloating. So one is the excess acid. The other one is just the breakdown products of these meats and dairy products. They increase the inflammation of the gut by many ways, because the meats they are loaded with many more bacteria compared to whole foods that are plant-based. So many ways that these foods can cause inflammation. Whereas if you take plant-based foods like the whole plant foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grains and beans, these foods are loaded with antioxidants and phytochemicals, lots of fiber. All of these, what do? They decrease inflammation of the gut. They decrease the irritability of the gut.
Yeah. Well, some of them might be wondering, okay, my doctor has advised not to take gluten. So like if I'm going for whole food plant-based eating, and if I have to eat wheat products and gluten, so that might cause irritable bowels. So that might be like one of
so the thing about wheat and gluten causing irritation is it is very small percentage, very small percentage. Like we'll come in more depth in it, like when we talk about celiac. But in general, gluten sensitivity happens only about 5% of the people.
Like I would say 1% of the population.
Yeah, it's like in a very little percentage. So gluten is not a concern for majority of the population. Like in fact, eating more whole grains that are made with like intact grains, not just processed grains, like intact grains like wheat, barley, and rye. Like these are more healthful and beneficial
Yeah.
because
And
of the amount of vitamins and minerals and fiber that is present in these foods.
yeah. And let's say even if you're gluten sensitive, there are other whole grains that do not contain gluten, and you can have those. So whether it is rice or teff, millet, sorghum, so all of these are gluten-free grains. So it's not that like you have to go for processed food instead of whole food plant-based foods. Yeah. So anyhow, we'll go into detail about these things. So Earl is asking, what should you do during or after a round of antibiotics to restore gut health?
One thing is keeping the diet very clean, like while you're on antibiotics, like making sure that you are getting plenty of fruits and vegetables, whole grains and beans, because these foods have lots of fiber, and this fiber is taken by the bacteria in the gut, and it is broken down into propionate and butyrate, which helps in the growth of good bacteria. So the fiber in the food actually acts as prebiotics. Prebiotics are substances which promote the growth of good bacteria. You might have heard the word called probiotics. Like probiotics are the beneficial bacteria that are present in our gut. So many people wonder, like, should I take some probiotics while taking antibiotics? When if you're on antibiotics for any particular reason, it's not a bad idea to take probiotics like short term, just maybe for a week or so. We don't generally recommend probiotics on long term basis. If you're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables and avoiding, not only eating whole food plant based way, but also avoiding the meats and dairy products, avoiding the processed plant foods that are made with flours and sugars, because research shows that when your diet is heavily based on processed plant foods, sugars and flours, the type of gut bacteria you harbor are less healthier compared to when you are on a plant-based diet. So two things that, in summary, what you can do if you're taking a round of antibiotics, like during and after, is following a whole food plant-based approach while avoiding the processed plant foods and the meats. The other one is if you want to take a short course of probiotics, that's okay. Yeah. So we were talking about irritable bowels and what foods to eat and what foods to avoid.
Like you were saying that there are two things that irritate the bowels. So one is the food and the other is the nerves.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's many people do not realize how many nerves that our gut has. Have you heard of this like an expression called gut feeling? Have you heard of this word called gut brain? Like, so actually, our gut is considered to be the second brain, right? Sometimes you might say, "Oh, that's my gut instinct. That's my gut feeling." That's not like it's not just happening just like that. It's the reason why you feel that way. Your gut is loaded, innervated with trillions and trillions of nerve fibers, and gut is one particular organ which has its own nervous system, right? It's called enteric nervous system, and the very cool way it functions. Like you have two types of the nerve fibers, right? Like the gut has two types of nerve fibers. One we call sympathetic, and the other one is parasympathetic. To help you understand what these are, like, okay, let's say you're walking in little bit in the evening, it's a little bit dark, and suddenly you start to hear like some sounds in the back as if like somebody's running towards you. Some animal is like pouncing towards you. What's your reaction, and what will be going on within you? Now you sense some danger, right? What happens to your heart rate? What happens to your blood pressure? You're sweating, you're preparing to either fight or flight, right? That's when, like, when you see that kind of um, when you go through that kind of experiences, it activates our sympathetic nervous system.
And that happens in seconds. It doesn't take much long for that to happen. So whether experiencing that increased heart rate or increased heartbeat, and like when you measure the blood pressure at that time, it would be very high.
So that's the sympathetic nervous system, and we have those sympathetic nervous system fibers in the gut. So what do they do? Like, when anytime you are a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, a little bit stressed, that all of that is felt in the brain. The brain senses it, and the brain has very powerful connections between the brain and the gut through various nerves. Like, so the spinal cord has different nerves that sense to the gut, and we also have other very important nerve that connects the brain and the gut. It's called vagus nerve. Have you heard of vagus nerve? It's V as in Victor, AGUS, vagus nerve. So vagus nerve is one of the biggest. It's the biggest nerve and the longest nerve, one of the longest nerves in the whole human body. And the cool thing about vagus nerve is it is a nerve that actually is responsible for that sense of nice relaxation. Like, anytime you have that sensation of relaxation, it's your vagus nerve is activated, and that's when you get that feeling of relaxation, calm, and peace. So vagus nerve is a part of parasympathetic nervous system, whereas the sympathetic nervous system is the stress response, where your heart rate is going up and blood pressure going up, your bowels are getting more irritable, you have more cramping, bloating, or maybe diarrhea. Whereas parasympathetic system, the vagus nerve is more calming, more relaxing, like you are more peaceful, your heart rate is more optimal, and your blood pressure is now in the normal range, and your bowels are working smooth and well and optimally. Make sense? So what do you think, like, which nervous system hyperactivity, is it the sympathetic nervous system overactivity, or the parasympathetic nervous system overactivity that would cause irritable bowels? What do you think? Yes, you guessed it right. It's the sympathetic nervous system hyperactivity or overactivity that causes irritable bowels. So more and more, uh, more and more, uh, medical organizations are recognizing uh, the value of the role of stress, in causing irritable bowels, and also finding ways to cope with stress in healthy ways. It's also is becoming more and more common for management of irritable bowels, along with changing your diet, like changing your diet to a whole food plant-based way of eating, less the foods that are like more soothing and more healing, and avoiding the inflammatory and irritating foods. Along with that, learning to cope with stress in healthy ways, they go hand in hand. Make sense? Like, along with food, I would suggest, like, anyone who has irritable bowels, like, try doing some breathing exercises, doing a little bit of stretching, yoga, meditation. These things will also calm the sympathetic nervous system and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which will help regulate the function of the bowels as well.
So Earl is asking, what about hot sauce and spicy food? Do they cause irritable bowels?
Well, the hot sauce and spicy food can irritate the bowels, like if it is too much, but a little bit of these spices and sauces, we haven't seen anyone getting irritable bowels. In fact, there are studies to show that a small amount of cayenne pepper can actually improve the like the symptoms of people who get irritable bowels. Also, the other things that might work for irritable bowels is kiwi fruit. Like a research study showed that taking 2 kiwi a day, it helps with people who have irritable bowels, especially like the constipation type. And peppermint oil, like also has been shown to, like a small amount, like tiny amount, on a daily basis, can improve irritable bowels. So the thing is, most of the conventional treatments that are being used for irritable bowels, like if you're put on medications, some of these are very expensive. There are new drugs on the market, like lubiprostone and linaclotide. They can cost up to $3,000 a year for a function for like the management of irritable bowels, and many of these medications have side effects. So it's important to look into natural alternatives, therapies to improve the symptoms. That's why we're talking about food and lifestyle changes. What are the things that you could look at? So summary, like the hot sauce and spicy food, it also depends upon what are you putting the hot sauce and spices on. Like if you're putting hot sauce on fried chicken and fried wings, I would say that would cause more gut problems than if you're using using a little bit of hot sauce on homemade fries without oil. So what, it's not just these sauces and the spices, but what you put these sauces and spices also makes a difference. Especially if you're going with fried foods and you're using the sauces and spicy stuff, like if oil along with the spices, it's more irritable compared to not using oil and using the sauces and spices. Make sense? So shall we move on? Like any other questions on irritable bowels? Good. Okay. So the other common conditions that many people face is what about common question, I would say, not condition. What about gluten? Like, do I have to like people worry about, like, do I have to avoid gluten? Right, like because there was I would say like the recently that question has come down a bit, but 5 or 7 years ago everyone was so crazy about oh, excuse me. Everyone was so crazy about like choosing to go gluten free. Yeah. So the people who need to avoid gluten are the people who have a disease called celiac. And celiac disease is a condition, it's an autoimmune problem where if you're diagnosed with celiac, your body has like it cannot tolerate gluten at all. Like it rejects gluten protein very harshly, and this is a serious condition. Like if you have celiac disease and you're taking gluten products, that can seriously damage your health. So it's very important to avoid gluten if you have celiac. Otherwise, you may develop like quite a bit of chronic diarrhea, blood in stools. You might lose weight. You may be malnourished. And people who take gluten with celiac, they may even develop some types of blood cancers like lymphomas. But fortunately, the percentage of people who have celiac is very, very small, like less than 1%. There are other set of people, like a small percentage of people, less than 5%, who may have some intolerance to gluten. So if you take gluten, like the wheat products, you may develop like some bloating and diarrhea and cramping. Um, Again, this is a very small percentage. If you have any gluten sensitivity, then you could avoid the gluten. But most of the time, what we found is like people who think it is a gluten sensitivity, uh, you have to really isolate the wheat and see if that's what is causing it. Because if you're eating uh, things like bread and cookies, and your body's not responding well to that, how do you know it's not the oils in it? How do you know it's not the sugar in it? How do you know it's not the preservatives and the flavors and the chemicals that the many food industry use? So how do you know it's not the dairy products in or the eggs in those baked goods? You see what I'm saying? So if you are taking some baked goods such as cookies and cakes and bread, and then recognizing that you may have gluten sensitivity, what we found is it's most of the time it's not gluten, it may be something else. So people who had who thought that they had gluten sensitivity, when they came to do the Gift of Health programs, and they've done, many of our students have done the Gift of Health workshop, and within few days that their food sensitivities were gone, including gluten sensitivity, like food allergies, that the foods that they thought that they could not eat before, they were able to tolerate it well. So it's important to recognize whether you have actual gluten sensitivity or not. Yeah. Even if you want to, as I think Shobha, you already mentioned this, right? This is important. Like even if you are gluten sensitive, it is not hard to eat a plant-based way, right? You could like choose the gluten-free grains, uh, like brown rice and quinoa and teff and sorghum. So many choices. And you can make all kinds of stuff. Like you don't have to feel yourself deprived of any of yeah, you don't have to deprive yourself of any of the favorite foods that you like. You could recreate them with the gluten-free grains. Good. So what does drug Mezavent do? So Mezavent is one of the medication that is used for inflammatory bowel disease, right? So we are talking about, so far we're we talked about irritable bowels, right? And we talked about celiac. We haven't we're just gonna talk about ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. These are inflammatory bowel conditions, and Mezavent is one of the medication that is commonly used for people with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. So let's talk about ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Both these conditions are put under like a broad umbrella term called inflammatory bowel disease. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's bowel disease, and it is characterized by inflammation. So what causes inflammation of the bowels? What is one thing that is touching the bowels that you're putting every day? It's the food. I like how Dr. Clapper has like in his office a shield where it says it's the food, and it's always been the food all along. Yeah. So and the types of food that increase the inflammation of the bowels, like that cause or promote the inflammatory bowel disease, are meat-based foods and dairy products, processed foods, processed plant foods, and flour-based foods, sugars. Like these foods, they inflame the bowels. Whereas the plant-based foods, like research shows that this study has been done in Japan, and it was published in World Journal of Surgery close to a decade ago, where the researchers took people with inflammatory bowel disease, and one group were on the regular diet, like a diet that was centered on meats and like dairy and the usual stuff that many people eat, the regular foods, and the other group was were eating plant-based foods. So the group that was put on a plant-based diet, at the end of 2 years, 92% of them did not have any symptom recurrence. Whereas the people who were the group that were eating the regular diet and were not educated about the plant-based eating, 60% of them had recurrence of symptoms within 2 years. And this is like the by far the best results that we have seen. Like when it comes to published research, even there is no single drug, like even the most expensive drugs and the most costliest drugs that are commonly used right now in the market, things like Remicade, you might have heard of this. These are called biologics. Even these kind of medications, they don't have such high probability of giving positive results. So it is quite a disabling conditions, like the Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Like people have diarrhea, bloating, failure to thrive, like malnutrition.
And even like once they eat the food, they have to run to the bathroom, and that is very scary for a lot of people. So that's why they're also scared to try any food, like when it comes to changing diet. So let's say even when they're recommended to eat plant-based, they're actually very afraid.
Yeah, many of so you gotta work with someone who can help you navigate and help you transition slowly. Because if you have irritable bowels, or if you have inflammatory bowels like Crohn's or colitis, it is important to like switch to plant-based eating, but do it under
supervision.
Yeah, under guidance. Yeah. So Asha is asking, please suggest me for irritable bowel symptoms. So Asha, it looks like you just joined the live. The thing is, we've been speaking for last 45 minutes, and in the first half of the session today, we talked about irritable bowel. So we recommend you like look at the replay for what to eat and what to avoid for irritable bowels. Like in summary, you want to focus eating more and more plant-based foods, that to whole foods, and less of animal-based foods, dairy products, and processed plant foods. Yeah, but look at the replay and watch the replay. And if you still have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. Sound good? Excellent. Like, lots of good questions coming today. Keep it coming. Yeah. And so Crohn's and colitis can be quite disabling, and not many people know about even the availability, or even the fact that these diseases can be easily managed with changing diet. So it's very powerful. Like this information is so powerful. Excellent. We are looking to see if there are any questions. Good. So if you like to learn more about these particular diseases, I would suggest checking out nutritionfacts.org. Dr. Greger has prepared fantastic videos. Like I can share.
Yeah,
I
why
can
don't
share.
you share the screen?
I can share to you the screen. I think this will be a good resource for like all of you to how to.
We can play the video.
I'll show you the resource. Let's see. Share our screen. So you can see this is the nutritionfacts.org website, and you can search the topic, the health topic that you're looking for. I already pulled up some tabs. Like if you look at this one, it says a dietary treatment for irritable bowel syndrome. So and all of this information that Dr. Greger has is based on science. Like you could, like I shared with you peppermint oil for irritable bowel. So you can just click on it, and there is a video explaining, and the video, the information in the video is based on science. So the wonderful thing is that he has all the scientific references where the information is based on. That's good, like, because we don't want to just go by the opinions of the people. You want the results, you want the recommendations based on science, right?
And if you can search inflammatory bowel disease.
Yeah, so if you just type in, so preventing inflammatory bowel disease with diet. So he has a video on that. So there is a video on this one, the best treatment.
Yeah, the best
diet for Crohn's disease
disease
treatment, right? So you could. He also has a video on the study that I shared with you for a treatment of inflammatory bowel disease, like the study that was published in World Journal of Surgery. He has a video for that. So all you have to do, you could either go to video library and browse videos by topic, right? So this is one way of doing it. There are various topics, or you could just go to search and then type the topic that you're looking for. Sound good? Well, that comes to the end of our session for today. Thank you for so much for joining us, and keep it for all your questions, and yeah, keeping it like interesting and engaging.
Yeah, and as we said, December is already here, and before we know it, this year is going to pass. We do want to let you know that, like, we will be having Christmas breaks. So during those times, there will be no Wednesday live sessions. So the next session, so next week's session would be the last session for this year. And again, we will be tuning back in Jan, like first week of Jan. So we do want you to enjoy your holidays. So we are just giving a few weeks break for the Christmas. So we are giving that holiday break. So next week, since next week is going to be the last session, so let us know if there is something in particular that you want us to cover or that you want us to answer. So feel free to ask questions or let us know. So you can let us know in the comments, or you can email us or message us in the Facebook. So whatever is convenient for you, let us know, and we'll be sure to cover that. So next week we have left it open. So whatever you guys want, or whatever questions you want it to be addressed, we'll be able to do that.
There is a question here: can a whole food plant-based diet reverse bowel cancer? So I have not come across any particular study which can actually reverse bowel cancer. So the standard, so bowel cancer, when we are saying bowel cancer, most of the time the common type of bowel cancer is the colon cancer. Colon cancer is cancer of the large bowel. This is the most common one, because the cancers of the small bowel, these are very, very rare, like less than 1% of the cancers of the bowel are actually small bowel. Like majority of these cancers are the large bowel cancer. The large bowel cancer can be present, it can present like early or late, like depending upon the severity of the disease. It is like staged into 4 stages, like stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like stage 1 and 2 is mostly localized to the bowel. Stage 3 is not only low in the bowel, but also there is spread, a little bit of spread around the bowel to the lymph nodes. And stage 4 is where there is spread to different parts of the body, like to the liver, to the lungs, and different parts of the body. So if it is stage 1 and 2, most of the time the treatment, the standard recommended treatment, is to have the portion of the bowel taken out and hook the 2 ends back together. So the standard of treatment for early stage, bowel cancer is surgery to resect that, to remove that part out. Whereas if someone has stage 3, then you need a multidisciplinary team. Like you need surgeon in the team, you need like an oncologist, like a cancer specialist in the team, and the pathologist. Like it's a multidisciplinary team making decisions about what's the best treatment. So if someone has stage 3, most of the time the treatment is the surgery, and along with like chemotherapy. Whereas stage 4, it's evolving. That like when there is spread to different parts of the body, especially if it's bowel cancer, like it has better outcomes compared to other types of stage 4 cancer. So even stage 4 bowel cancer, people don't have to lose hope. There are things that can be done. So where does diet, plant-based diet, fit in all of these, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. What research has shown is that even if you have bowel cancer, like once you undergo the standard treatment, if your diet is rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains and beans, and your diet has less of animal-based foods and the meats and the dairy products, so your diet is the heavily plant-based, you have better outcomes. What does that mean? That means you have a less chance of having any recurrence. See, once you have cancer, you always have cancer. Even though, like people, what do I mean by that? Is basically if you have stage 1, stage 2 cancer, let's say you have that portion of the bowel is taken out, removed, there may be still like small cancer cells that are somewhere in the body, or the body like again forming these new cancer cells, right? Even though that's removed. So even though the cancerous part is removed, our body is like producing new cancer cells, or some cancer cells like left out in the body, like small amounts. These are microscopic. So that is why it is very, very important. It's not just focus on removing the part of the body which has cancer, but also equally focus on doing everything possible to prevent that cancer coming back. Have you noticed friends and family members who had cancer before? Could be breast cancer or bowel cancer, prostate cancer. they underwent the recommended treatment and the cancer came back. It's common, like it is common for these cancers to come back. And the research shows that when you stick with a whole food plant-based approach, you have less chance of having cancer coming back. Significant. Now, your chance of getting recurrence is significantly down. Do we recommend the whole food plant-based diet by itself to reverse bowel cancer? No, that is not standard. Like we have not seen any research paper showing that, hey, oh, you have bowel cancer, just do the plant-based diet, it will go away. We have not seen like any research papers like that. Does it clarify? So if somebody has bowel cancer, the treatment is still go conventional route, get the cancerous part out, and then your real chemotherapy, in the sense like your daily chemotherapy in your kitchen, is the food that you're eating for breakfast, lunch, and supper. So your kitchen is your pharmacy. Make sense? Good. Excellent. Good questions, huh? Yeah. So we'll sign off. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening. We will see you next week.
Yes. So have a wonderful evening.